Today on the Basketball Manitoba podcast, we have Stephen Tackie. Stephen is the current head coach of the Sturgeon Heights Huskies, where he's coached for 14 years at both the Junior Varsity and Varsity levels. His teams have been to the Provincial Championship 5 times, and he won a Junior Varsity Provincial Championship in 2009. He has been involved with the Manitoba Provincial Team at various levels since 1998. In 2012 and 2013, he led the 17U boys program to consecutive national silver medal performances. Additionally, he has coached for the Center for Performance program and the University of Winnipeg's men's program. He is an instructor for Canada Basketball's coach certification system, and he is a regular in the summer camp circuit. He was voted Junior Varsity Boys Coach of the Year twice, and in 2010 and 2013 was a finalist for the Sport Manitoba Coach of the Year award. Stephen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So we were talking before when we were not rolling, and you were saying, you're like, man, during the pandemic, I had an idea to, interview Manitoba legends. And now you're like sitting here being interviewed because you know what, you're still active. But I would ask many people you've coached, and I would say based off your resume, you're well on your way to being a staple and potentially a legend one day. And I say that wholeheartedly. I'm not exaggerating. You know what I mean? You're one who's put in the work, and you're super active. Like I said, you're out there. I mean, before the pandemic, you were essentially everywhere, right? And that's kind of how we, people in the Hall of Fame, like, they go because they're all Canadians. But I think it's what's the other way they get in? It's just through they're builders. Oh, yeah, and so when you get into the Hall of Fame, it will be under the builders category. So I say all that is to say, how do you feel about us stealing your idea to interview Manitoba legends?
Well, I remember thinking, I think it was selfishly that. Well, okay, I remember one summer I was going to be coaching one of the provincial teams, and for some reason, I can't remember the background, but they encouraged me to go talk to Dale Bradshaw. And I was like, okay, that's great. I remember Dale or Coach Bradshaw because when I was coaching at UW, the women's would play before the men's, and he would sit up in the top corner. And there'd be a few other coaches with him, and
yep,
there was always just this like synergy of like knowledge or something, and so that's how I was like, oh, that's Dale Bradshaw. And you know how it is when you don't know somebody, then you just formulate these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But I started to learn a little bit about him, and so then they encouraged me to go talk with him, and so. I remember it's a Saturday morning and I'm driving there, and I'm like, I want to give respect to who I'm not because, he did this and that in basketball. Like that was irrelevant to me, but this is someone that's giving his time for me to come and talk about basketball. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, okay, I got to be respectful. But I've never really spoken to this human being before. He's inviting me into his house. Like, this is great. So I remember we sat there and sitting at his table and we're talking basketball. He's talking about, this is what, and he would use the phrase, you do. This is what you do. You would have your point guard here. You would have this. You would play this defense. And I'm listening and I'm thinking, he's so knowledgeable. This is so good. I might not take any of these X's and O's, but what I'm experiencing is somebody who is passing on like a time. Like, this is what basketball was like. I was involved here. I was passionate, and I'm giving you that. Mm-hmm. That was so powerful for me. And then when I was listening to the details, I remember thinking, okay, so wait a second. I understand why he has his point guard here. Because if his point guard's here, they're playing a 2-3 zone, and this happens. Oh, and I start to see how he was an individual that had a whole bunch of thoughts. Like, it wasn't like pieces like a lot of times us as coaches do now. was a whole system, and it made me appreciate what I actually didn't get a chance to experience, which was how basketball was when he was so into it. So I started thinking about that, and then I said I would love to talk with Jaime Fox, and I don't know why that name came to my mind. I think it's because one of my cousins, Kevin, he transferred to Kelvin, and I hated the idea of transferring, which actually, Darcy, I got to tell you. I'll get back to the Jaime story, but I remember when you and Isaac were at Sauve.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is a dynamic. That's a crazy combination. And Sauve being a small school and all that kind of stuff. And I was a big fan of that tandem. Mm-hmm. So when Isaac moved to Glenwood, I was like, you were breaking up. And I don't think you moved to Glenlawn.
I did. He convinced me, and I went. I went, but I was injured most of my 11th year, that grade 11 year. So the year he transferred, I played like parts of the season because I was injured. Yeah. Yes. But then in grade 12, we played a full season. Yeah.
Yes, you did. And so I remember thinking that, because I always like to have parity because it's different stories, right? Yep. Like the story of that and the story of this allows for us to have an enriched basketball culture.
Yeah.
So anyways, Kevin transferred to Kelvin, and he was telling me the reason why he wanted to is because Jaime Fox. And I was like, what do you mean Jaime Fox? Like, what do you mean Jaime Fox? Like, that's ridiculous. But Jaime was a coach at Kelvin for years and constantly, Kelvin is in the center of the city, big school. You're going to have athletes. And then I started to understand that individual was another individual that was creating stories. Mm-hmm. So when I think about Kelvin High School, I actually think about the players that Jaime would have impacted. Mm-hmm. And I would have loved to hear stories from him. When I was coaching a provincial team, Jordan Hemmings stayed at my house because he lived in Brandon. So he would come and he'd stay over the weekend, and then we would go to practice. And he would tell stories about his dad. And it was awesome. And I got to work a basketball camp with Jerry. I actually didn't get to work it with Jerry. Went there to work it with Jerry, and Jerry's like, okay, you do the camp. So I found that out at that. And then in the evening, there was supposed to be a camp for the university players, and he's okay, you do that camp too. And I didn't see him. I didn't see him for the rest of the time. He popped in every now and then, and it was good. It was really good. So I got to meet him. So I started thinking about all these people that I would just like to sit down and just talk with and ask questions about what do you think basketball is like now, then, to tell stories. And that's when I noticed that Basketball Manitoba and you were doing this. So I was like, oh, good. It's being done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I just love the fact that we get to share. And and that, I mean, I think that sharing is one of the key ways that we could build our culture. And I can get into a whole rant. I'm not going to. I got some discipline, but I think it's cool. I think it's
you could
great.
Do it later. You just save the rant for later. We got more. You'll be ranting. Don't worry. I'll cue you up. Well, and it's interesting. You said that because I think, or Adam was telling me, I actually just interviewed Ogo not too long ago, and it hasn't aired yet, but by the time yours airs, Ogo will have been aired. So, but he was saying he actually contacted Adam when we were in the midst of talking about this, and he and Dean Favoni wanted to do something. So everyone was, so that's why it's exciting, because it's like great, because I think, our listenership has been going up, our viewership has been going up, and people obviously, like, they find it, they go back on YouTube and watch old episodes, or, so it's been great. I've enjoyed it immensely. It's just, I think I agree with you. It's just another way to kind of get to know the people who, I remember the first time I heard the word a champion. we need champions in certain areas to make things happen. And I think what you're speaking to when you speak to someone like about Hammy Fox, he was a champion, right? He's like, I'm going to be here. I'm consistent. I'm going to help grow something. So when you think about Calvin, you think about Hammy Fox and all the players who played, they identify with him. And even like you talk about Calvin and Kevin transferring, like they beat us in the Final Four in my last year. Right. And so like, and like, so we had but again, it's again, those champions are important. And again, the reason why you're on this is because you are one of those people. And that's kind of how we got into this whole conversation. So I'm kind of curious to say, like, I've been asking this question of mainly coaches. And I'm curious, so far we've had a season, right? And I'm curious, it's been, we have a season. The season got shut off. We didn't have one. And then now we have one. So I'm curious about, maybe some of the perspectives that you've gained through the pandemic and how maybe that's affected or changed some of your coaching styles or maybe even the way that you just see things.
It has, but I think I really believe that, and I mean, I'm not trying to say that I'm the only one who believe it, but when we coach, there is way more than got to have a good pick and roll. You got to make sure you're spacing on the weak side. Like, come on, like you got to keep your check on your hip. And listen, I love all that stuff.
Yeah. But
there's so much more. And that is what was missed for me. Is that, and I kind of felt selfish about it. I was like, it's missed for me because I don't get a chance to try to impact somebody. Like, why do I have to be that person to impact them? Why can't they have that in other ways? Well, it was what I love to do. And so when you have people that love the same thing, I just love to kind of create more than just, okay, this game, we're going to do this to win it. This game, we're going to do this to win it. I want players that I get to coach to understand that in life, if you have something solid to like stand on, you can have so many things happening, but you have something solid to stand on that you can continue to build. And this year, I'm like, okay, let's have what we have that's solid to stand on. But then as you coach, you're like, okay, now should we have this? Should we have this offense? And I realized real quickly that all of that stuff doesn't matter this year for sure. To try and all of a sudden have an offense that you might get 2 weeks to practice, you're not going to get any return on the time. Like, you're not going to get good at it. They're not going to be proficient at the reads that you're going to make out of it because you don't have enough time to practice it. So this year I was like, I think it's just about skills, like really get better at shooting the basketball and defending and get better at coming off of screens and passing. And if you can get better at those, then it actually doesn't really matter what we might try and put in. Your level has increased. And I think in times, you might say, okay, at this point in the season, there's like 80% skills and 20% strategy. And then at this percent, it's 50 and 50. I don't think I'm really going to go to that 80 and 20 because it might not bring the fruits. I think kids want to play this year. They want to be a part of something that they weren't. There were kids that were in grade 10 that wanted to try out for the team in grade 11 that didn't get a chance, or kids that are in grade 11 that wanted to try out and now they're in grade 12 and they're not good enough. But they're on our team because they want to play. And so I think that the pandemic has opened up my eyes again, another level to how we want to win and all that stuff as coaches. I don't know how important that is to the role that we actually hold as coaches. All of these kids I just think of the guys that are on my team this year, and I think of their desires, and they want to be part of a team. They want to get a chance to play, and they want to win. So how to balance all of that is a tricky thing.
It's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. So, yeah, I mean, I've been asking people, kind of what their challenges have been throughout the pandemic, and that's interesting.
What have you been getting? What have you been getting?
You're gonna ask me. See, you would have been good as a host. You're gonna ask me, man, straight up. And I've said this to so many people, and I think anyone who's is a friend of mine, or even an associate, has seen a potentially a huge change in me through the pandemic. It's been, I always say this. It's something that I remind myself and I remind other people is everything has a cost. There's a cost to everything, I should say. And like you can't have it all, right? This doesn't exist, but what you can do. Oh. Yeah, exactly. But what you can do is you can find those positive spins or lean into the things that are positive from any situation, right? Or you can lean to the negative, which tends to be what most people do. So I actually found that through the pandemic, I went super deep, like whether it been like loss of job and things like that, it went real low. And then after that, I don't remember exactly what happened, but I was like, nah, like this doesn't have to be how you approach this. And so anyways, without getting into all the details, it challenged me in some amazing ways. And it's kind of led me to even doing this. Like the fact that I'm interviewing right now is because of that pandemic, and not because there was a simple opportunity, because I actually started to shift my perspective on how I viewed myself in the world and kind of what I wanted to do. So it's been I hate to say it, it's been a positive experience. It just really, really has all around, because I've kind of understood that those are the things I can't control. So they're not negatives, they're just uncontrollables. What can I control? And then I just leaned hard into those things I could control. And then everything just kind of works itself out. You know what I mean? And you're happy going through the process. So it's been good for me, but that's probably the perspective that I've taken away for sure. So,
yesterday I was talking with Jeff Leping, which I'm sure you're going to interview, or maybe I already have.
Of course, we will be.
And I was saying how this year we have to be careful not trying to just replicate what we've always done. Talking about provincials and rankings and people are so enamored with all of that. And I'm like, there's been one tournament this year. That was in December. It had 6 teams in it. Like, what are we talking about right now? And we have a tournament coming up this weekend. And I think there might be one more. So the opportunity to evolve and the opportunity to see how, because we had that structure for so long, that is all we knew.
Mm-hmm.
The situation we're in could give us a chance to see a different structure. And then we can create another thing. And I think we have to open up that and be welcome to what can we come up with now. We don't have to only go back to the other. So I'm hoping that as a collective group of basketball leaders and coaches and that kind of stuff, we don't feel like, well, that's all we know, so that's all we're going to do.
Yeah.
Or else, we've slipped and we've missed on an opportunity to.
No, that's exactly it. All right. So enough of this pandemic talk. I want to dig into your story a little bit. So I'm gonna tell a little story here. So when I think about you, just generally, right? Like first thing that comes to mind.
This is gonna be fun.
first thing that comes to mind is energy. Okay, that's the first thing. Stephen Tackie, energy. The second thing is passion. It's passion. Okay. Yeah. But the first memory, so those are kind of like the things I know about you, okay? Passionable. But the first memory that comes to mind is you displaying that energy and passion when Hot Sauce and his tour came to Winnipeg. And I remember there was a massive dunk, something happened, and you got so amped up. You jumped out, and keep in mind, you were a player. You were playing, you were in a uniform. And you jumped, so you're on the bench and you jumped out of your seat and then you kind of ran the baseline and you ran around that hoop and you were just so fired up, right? And I've seen you many times coaching since that moment, but for some reason, that's what stands out. And I believe it makes sense because it just really shows your love for the game and the energy you bring to every interaction, right? So that's kind of my, first thoughts, like when I just think first right away. And I like to do this experiment when I interview people because I know most of the people, even by name, when I interview them, right? Yeah. So I say all that. I'm going to ask 2 questions. But the first question I want to answer first is, do you remember that game and that moment?
Clearly. Like I remember the N1. I even remember how it kind of came to be. Glover Jackson, great guy. Oh, great guy. Glover Jackson. I used to do camps with him, and he would have little camps and everything like that. It was so good. Like the thought that we had a Harlem Globetrotter. Like again, this is where something like this is so important. We literally had a Harlem Globetrotter in our city, and I just don't know how much the basketball community really understood his history and his stories and how it could have been written. Anyways, so he had called me and asked me, at least I think it was Glover, but I remember I knew him relatively well.
Yeah.
And then also he had asked my cousin Bernard. And so Bernard, or maybe I asked Bernard, whatever the case was. Actually, it might not even have been Glover that asked me, but I remember Glover had set it up. And so Bernard was like, are we really gonna play? Are we really gonna play in this? And I was like, first of all, it's not about us. There's not a lick of a person that is coming to see you and me.
Yeah. You're the Washington Generals.
And if we think that they're coming to see us play basketball, then these people are paying way too much money. So we go there and we're in the dressing room and Mike Page is playing and Vern. Did you ever play with Vern? Was he?
No, I don't. I never played with him. No.
Okay. He was there. Anyways, there were a bunch of people. And at first they're like, yeah, we're gonna play, we're gonna win. And I'm thinking, it's not about us. The only thing I needed to do was make sure I didn't fall.
Yes.
And the ball not be dribbled between my legs. Okay. So I gotta tell a story. This is honest truth. And I don't care what it makes me look like. I knew hot sauce. And I made it a goal. And I love defense. Okay. I really, as all ball players, we have this fictitious belief of our abilities, right? We have to. But I said, there is no way I am guarding him. I am not. I will guard the other guy, but I am not guarding him. And I remember there's one play in transition and I was coming down and naturally the flow would have had me guarding him. I literally, this is me. This is him. I came like this. I realized I was not. I wanted
no part of that.
No, and sure enough, a few possessions after that, one of the players decides to clap in his face, and Hassas just did it. He just boom, and he dribbled it between his legs. Guy turned around, he threw it off his back, and I was just like, not gonna be me.
Oh man, yeah, I remember that game, man. I was, I went. I think I was in my last year of university, whatever. We're like, we're going to this game. But so I brought that whole story up because that's kind of how I remember you. And so obviously, the second question is now you need to tap into your memory banks and take us way, way, way back to some of your first memories of basketball. Like, how did you even get involved in the game?
So, and I can clearly remember certain things. When I was born and grew up, I grew up in Tyndall Park, and we lived on Kinver Avenue. And down the street, my cousin Ernest Norty, he lived down the street, and then a little bit further away, my cousin Bernard Canca lived. But man, Kinver, oh gosh, in the summertime, loved it. Didn't know what basketball was. Hockey. It was hockey. It was Dale Howardchuk. It was Thomas Steen. It was the Winnipeg Jets, and it was hockey.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then of course outdoor soccer. And I remember my dad putting me in hockey, and then after a season or like 4 games, when he realized that most of the games are outdoor, he was like, "Yeah, we're not doing this anymore." So, but I didn't know about basketball. At recess, we played tetherball, we played marbles, but we wouldn't play basketball. To the point where I didn't know what it was. I moved to St. James, went to Athlone, and in grade 5, we had volleyball and we had basketball. And it's not like I had seen the game before. I probably had, but it was on TV, and I was annoyed because that meant hockey wasn't on TV. So I was changing the channel. But I liked sports, and I wanted to play sports. And probably by that time, I had decided that my identity was going to be, with my cousins, we always played sports and ran races and all that kind of stuff. So played basketball. And then I got to junior high, and you try for teams. But one of the key things that stood out was that by grade 7, I started to like basketball. And kids had trading cards, the basketball trading cards.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I didn't have any of them. And I sure enough wasn't going to ask my parents, can I have money to buy it? So that they could say, to buy what? You want to spend your money on what? Ghanaian parents, I'm not having that. And so I would somehow finagle my way in getting some cards and then trade 2-for-1s. And then I would amass, some cards. But then the summer of grade 7 to grade 8, there was a court. It wasn't a court at the time, the community center, just a bike ride away from my house. And this is a touching story. So anyone listening, get ready for a touching story. A friend of mine ran to my house and was like, they're just finishing the court. They're just finishing the court. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. But we got on our bike and we rode our bike. And I remember seeing like the certain kind of truck or whatever it was, this rolling off the tar. And they had built a new court. It was at Heritage Community Center. And like that evening, I think there were 20, 22 people on the court, one ball, 2 teams, okay? And we just played. And I remember that because there was so much excitement for basketball and playing. And then I went, and then grade 8 came and I made the varsity team. And it wasn't, I don't want to say I wasn't good. I was good.
The varsity team in grade 8? Of junior high. Of junior high.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And we had a really talented player, Clarence Vigilance. He was on the team, and we had some other really good players. I say Clarence because anytime you're a Husky, I got to throw a shout out to other Huskies, right?
Yeah.
And the coach, Mr. Gilhooly, he came to me and he said, listen, Stephen, defense is your forte. I didn't know what that word meant. I don't know, forte. I'm a grade 8 kid. What does forte mean? But it didn't matter because at that time, he came to me and told me something special about me. And all of a sudden, that love just continued to grow.
Yeah.
So then that summer, me and a friend of mine, we rode our bikes to Polo Park. I borrowed money from my sister. And we went to Sports Check, Polo Park. Sports Check used to be downstairs in Polo Park.
Yeah.
And I bought a basketball hoop.
A hoop?
Big box. A hoop. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so after we bought it, I realized, wait a second, how are we going to get this home? So we're at Polo Park and we're driving down. We got to go down Ness. So he's on his bike and I'm on my bike. We prop the big box on our shoulder and we have to ride at the same speed all the way for like 25 minutes down Ness with the big basketball box on our shoulder just to get to my place. And we make it and we open a box and then we put the hoop together. And then I realized we don't have the big pole.
Oh, it's just the...
So later that evening, we dug a hole, we put the big pole in with some strings, and there was a hoop, and kids in the neighborhood we went to play. So like my first memories of basketball, they go to a point where it was such special life events
Mm.
I think that's what made the game rooted so much, because they were life memories that I know I won't forget.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. So you had mentioned one of your coaches or teachers, or the one coach there that kind of, you said he just said something to me, and he said, "This is what you're going to be about." So I'm sure he was potentially an early mentor. Who are some of the other mentors that kind of encourage you to play or coach you throughout the years?
Yeah, Mr. Guhuli for sure, and that was junior high, and then Mr. Pasechnik at Silver Heights. And again, it was just because of you were part of a group and he was the coach. But Mr. Pasechnik was interesting because he was a coach of the varsity team, but every year there was other coaches, right? So we always had other coaches. And in my grade 12 year, there was Vic Pruden, and Mr. Pasechnik. He was really excited. It was the spring of grade 11. And at that time, we got to play Spring League. I don't know if you ever played Spring League at UW.
Mm-hmm.
Greatest time. Biggest error we made was not having Spring League anymore. And he said, yeah, next year, Vic Pruden's going to coach. And I felt the need to be excited because he was so excited. I didn't know who Vic Pruden was. But I'm like, oh, that's good. That's good. And to find out later that he coached at the University of Winnipeg. He was one of the, or if not the person who introduced the Westman Classic. He was another big, as you would say, champion for basketball. So he was there. And like that experience was really good because I had a chance to see another style of coaching. But besides that, other mentors in university, I would go watch the University of Winnipeg practices. I would watch Tanya McKay, Bill Wedlake, and I would watch Colleen at U of M. And I would just go there and I'd sit and I'd watch. And I remember with Colleen, the girls would have their like warm up pre-practice stuff, and then she would walk in, and literally it was like she would walk into the center of the court, and I don't even know if she would blow her whistle, but like everybody knew coach is here, and like they would all just come to the center. The respect that she commanded, I was like, I love the fact that there is an understanding there. But then I had some friends. Kirby was a really, like, him and I, we coached at the same place. He coached at Silver Heights, coached at Sturgeon Heights. So we were together. Like when the varsity team was playing, that was my team. When the JV team, like we were just together. And so because of that, we were, I learned from him just, and my love for the game grew from there as well. I don't know if there was like one person.
Yeah.
I know that there was a collective group of people. And then I just wanted to be good. I remember saying one time at a practice, I was like, if Randy Cassano was watching me coach right now, what would I be like? What would it be like? And I said, if he was watching me, this is when I was at Silver Heights, if he was watching me. And so it reminded me every day I got to give my best, because if I respected him as a coach and he was watching me, what would I be different? And I probably would be different at that time. So in a roundabout way, he acted as a mentor. He would have had no idea, because I wanted to be the best that I can be every day for the players. And as a way of gauging, it'd be like, well, what would this, So I don't know. I don't know.
No. Well, you had mentioned kind of a few things. You mentioned Randy Cassano, you mentioned Colleen, kind of some takeaways, but what other things, through your time, mentors, Tanya, all these people that you mentioned, some of the lessons, strategies, things that you still maybe you are trying to pass on to some of your coaches that coach with you, some of your players, or things that you even took and like live by after that you saw that and you're like, oh, I'm going to do that from now on. Just things like that have kind of you've learned throughout your time coming up and seeing these mentors in action.
I don't know, but I could assess it this way. Mr. Gahuli would have then taught me that it's important to make sure everyone knows that they have a role.
Mm.
And I believe I try and do that now, because if everyone has a role, then we remind everybody that everyone's important and everyone's equal on the team. Some of the other things about, I think the main things that I take away is the value of being part of something bigger than yourself.
Mm.
Yeah, that is 100%. A quote that many of the players that I've coached would have heard is a poem, I believe by Rudy Kipling, and it goes, "Now this is the law of the jungle, as old and as true as the sky. And the wolf that shall keep it will prosper, but the wolf that shall break it must die. As the creature that girdles the tree trunk, the law runneth forward and back. For the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack." Every time I say it in context of basketball, every time there's emotion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It makes me think about all of the players all at once. Like this is a rush of lives. And we share it. I want the kids to understand it. And so I think when it comes to mentors, all of them are part of that pack for me. Mm. All of them. And I would want that any people that I've had a chance to coach that have become coaches to recognize how each individual will strengthen the pack, but you've got to feed the pack, and you got to recognize that as it being strong. I think that's one of the big takeaways, and I think that also comes from my family with just growing up. My dad had sponsored family members to come to Canada, and there'd be times where family friends would live at our place for some time. That's just community, you know what I mean? Yeah. And my aunts and uncles, and I think that just was the vibe that I had growing up. And when you mix that with my experiences with coaches, I think it's about being as a unit.
Yeah. Well, I think in the teams that I've seen you coach, it's very, very evident that, you say that poem, you say, absolutely, there's huge buy-in, and there's a certain, again, teams tend to reflect their coaches in some way. And your teams always came with, I've seen people play on your teams that didn't, like, they never had you as a coach before. And like, especially those provincial teams. I was like, I didn't know that they could play like this, but not like their skill, but just like the way that they were existing in the court. Right. And I think some of that mentality, it's like, it's infectious, right? Like part of the pact, and like it. So yeah, I 100%, I totally see exactly what you mean. Now, so we're talking about getting into coaching. Like, well, how did you get into coaching? Tell us the story of how you even started. What was your first team like that you ever coached?
I would have been, at that time, they had regionals.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. You remember regionals.
Oh, yeah.
There's a certain age group of people that remember regionals.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, but when you're in grade 12, you don't have regionals. Okay, you're older. And so Mr. Posesnik, and I think that's why he holds a place in my heart. When he gave me an opportunity, he's like, yeah, we're having regionals to coach the grade 8 and 9 group of kids in our region. So me and a friend, right, and when I think about it now, I was like, I was in grade 12. And I remember being at Bruce Junior High and like running a practice. Like I could just try to imagine what that was like. Like if I think about what that, like, if I could go watch that practice. But so that would have been the very first basketball team that I coached. And like those people, I mean, they're kids and they're adults and all that kind of stuff. And then I coached regionals again the year after that, and I continued to coach regionals. But my first high school team, and I remember going back to watch a game or two at Silver Heights. And again, they had a different coach. The junior team, year after year after year after year, had a new coach every year. And like a lot of people, I have love for my school, Husky basketball. And so I was like, that's enough. I don't want to have a continual rotation of coaches. I'm like, I'm going to coach. And at that time, I decided that I was going to dedicate my time coaching. And then there were a couple friends of mine and so there were 3 of us. And yeah, that was it. And from there, I was like, yep, I'm not going to let there be a rotation of coaches. And the kids that come to Silver Heights deserve to have something they can count on. And I was like, I'm going to be the coach. And by that time, Kirby had finished his first year, and then we were kind of coaching. So that was my first.
That's interesting. So I'm curious. So when so now I'm thinking just like timeline. You're at this point, are you in university already? I guess, right? You're in your second, third year type thing.
Third year. Second year university.
And at that time, did you already know were you in education already? Had you already planned to be a teacher? No. And so how much of the coaching encouraged you to be a teacher?
Yep. My mom always told me I was going to be a lawyer. When I was younger, she said, "You're going to be a lawyer." So for forever, I was going to be a lawyer. I did debating, I did public speaking, because in my mind, I got to do these things to be a lawyer. Took political science, and in university, I was going to major in political science. I was going to be a lawyer. And then, life moves and you get different experiences. And I still was going to move in that direction, but I started coaching. And then I really liked coaching and I really liked teaching. And I remember I wrote the LSAT because I was still going to law, but in order to apply to law school, I was too late for that time. And so instead of not doing anything, I said, education is only 2 years. I will go into education. I will do the 2 years. And then after the 2 years, I have a teaching degree, but then I'll go to law school. And if I want, then I can go teach later on. Mm-hmm. But in that time, you know what happened? It's just like, no. And I was like, I want to be good at coaching so bad. That was another thing. I said, if I learn how to teach, then maybe I'll learn how to teach basketball.
Yeah.
So in my youthful mindset, I was like, this is all adding up. And so I went into education, and then I loved it, and I continued there.
Yeah.
And so that's
so you're at Silver at the time. You obviously have to do a placement. Did you do your placement at Silver somehow? Did you finagle that into there? Or were you at a different school coaching at Silver? What was that? What happened?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So they let you choose like two options. Mm-hmm. And like this time, you have to understand, I've been coaching for a while. Okay. Now this is like 5 years into university. So I've been coaching for a while. And they're rivals now. Like
yeah.
We have to beat Oak Park. Like I had enough. A friend of mine, Scott Kirkpatrick, he was at John Taylor, then he was at Oak Park, and there was that friendly rivalry, so I have to beat them. And then I find out, Darcy, let me tell you, I find out that I am at John Taylor. And
wow.
I'm like, this is not happening. Like, I can't. John Taylor's right down the street. This is not happening. I'm like, I'm at John Taylor. Okay, can I still coach? I'm not going to coach John Taylor. Like, you know what I mean? I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So that was one of my placements, and I was still coaching at Sturgeon Heights. But Scott, friend of mine, and Spiros Kavatis, they were coaching at Oak Park at that time. And another friend of mine, Ian Hayes, was coaching at John Taylor. So we would play a game, and then I would go teach the next day against the players we beat. And I was like, hi.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was thinking about that just timeline wise. I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense. If he was coaching there, I'm like, there must have been
But my
some. They would have
second
never
year,
thought it would have been out there though.
yeah, my second year, I was at Sturgeon Heights.
Okay.
And so then that made it really, really good. And then I was hired there. I mean, Silver Heights, sorry. And then I was hired there. And that first year was awesome because I had such a good group of kids that just loved and were they formed a protest one year. So we always had open gym in the mornings, open gym basketball. Okay.
Yeah.
7:30, you come and you just play. And then volleyball in the beginning, but no one came in the morning for volleyball. But there was one coach that didn't like the fact that basketball was being played in the morning because it's volleyball season.
Yeah.
So they would come, teammates like Craig Peniston, Tim Rossi, James McGill. Oh, these guys. They would literally come to school at 7:30 and sit in the empty gym. They wouldn't change and just sit there because they wanted to make the point of, we're here, no one else is here. They did that for like 5 days in a row to make the point that the gym is empty, no one's here. And I was just like, you all are committed, you want it. And it was like, yeah, that's great.
Wow.
And they got open gym back,
Yeah. That's awesome. That's commitment right there. That's a love right there.
Yeah.
More morning open gym, man. The schools that had that, like I got to experience that, thankfully, man. And then I would hear other people and they're like, oh yeah, we like when I in my school, there was a time when it was morning and then sometimes at lunch.
Yeah.
Like it would let you like double, and like other schools, it was like lockdown.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't believe it. But it always takes a champion, someone to say, hey, we're opening this gym. Takes a teacher, takes someone to come up and do that, right? So
actually, I want to tell you real quick, like the first time I did an individual, it was my first year and it was before the season. It was like a little bit before season. And there was one kid that I had kind of known. And I said, do you want to get in the gym? So it's the first time ever, go to the gym and I don't know how to turn the lights on in the gym. Okay.
I laugh because I've been there before.
So I just opened the doors. And we have the exit sign illuminating. So we got some light. Then I realized I don't have a key for the equipment room.
Oh.
I don't have a ball. But in my mind, I can't make him think that I totally don't know. Actually, his name is Darren Humming. He works in media, radio.
Of course. Yeah, I know Darren.
Yeah. And so there's no light and no ball. And here him and I are working on defensive shuffle.
Wow.
That's all we had. That's all we had. And we were going to make the most of it. Yeah.
Hey, it's better than doing nothing, I guess, right? Work on some defense.
It was great.
So I wanted to kind of ask you, like, I mean, you've been coaching now for a while. We had talked about, that when you kind of opened up with the story of Dale Bradshaw and kind of like his perspectives, and he was teaching you stuff. So I was curious, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen over the years, of basketball from when you first started to now? And then maybe also you talk about potentially how your philosophy or your approach has changed along with that.
I don't think I mean, as it started, I don't know, but I do remember the teams, and I think the style of basketball, I can see how it has changed or evolved or enhanced or whatever word we want to use, because they all have different connotations. Like if I say gotten better, it doesn't necessarily mean it's gotten better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you said, you have your point guard, got my point guard, and this is going to be a ball handler, probably smaller. Then you have your two guard, and that person, this is how I thought. That person is going to be the scorer. That's Michael, right? That's it.
Yeah.
You're doing the score. Then I got to have that small forward who's really athletic and long and can run the floor, because that's what Pippen did. So that's what we're going to do, right? And then you have your power forward who's really strong and can score a little bit. It's tough because that's what Malone and Barkley were. And then You have to have your big center that's going to block shots, that's going to, finish with hook shots and all that kind of stuff, because that's what Ewing did, and that's what Elijah did, and O'Neal did.
Yeah.
But then you got to have your guy off the bench. You need to have your shooter that comes off the bench that stretches the floor, or your athlete that could just defend multiple positions. And for years, that's what it was. That's how I saw the game. And so, you would try and find the pieces. And in high school, you get what you get.
Yeah.
Right? But I think having that predisposed idea forced me to see that in certain people and then give them that. And I don't necessarily look at it that way anymore.
Mm.
But also, I think a lot of people, like I want to mention Scott Martin for an instance, coaching at Sisler for so long, the demographic of players that he had forced a good coach to say, you know what do I need an inside presence for? I don't have that. So as I watched, I realized that he played a role in how I see the game as well. He would have 10 guards. And so then they would develop, you know what I mean? Like they would develop a way of playing that allowed those kids to showcase their talents. And that's one of the things that I've seen the game kind of, I think as a high school coach, you evolve, but you also serve your community. I'm the type of person who I don't have like, this is what we do on offense, and you come in and you fill those roles. But my philosophy, I think, has grown in the sense that how can you allow an individual to do the best that they can be with the skills that they have and the skills that they are going to acquire. And I think by doing that, you hopefully give everybody the chance to have the best experience. But the game, like I love the 3-ball. I always have. I've loved it. I don't care what anybody say. I can shoot the lights out of the ball. I don't care what anyone says. Other people can say otherwise. I can long range shoot, especially when I was in my room and I had that basketball on my door. But the way people shoot the ball, like we played yesterday, and the amount of people that hit shots from behind the arc, not took them, but hit them. But then the amount of people that think they can hit shots. But the game hasn't changed in the sense of if you don't defend, it doesn't happen. Everybody wants to get dribble penetration to the key. You want to get to that spot. You want to create mismatches and advantage situations. So whether it was in the 90s when John Stockton and Malone ran pick and roll, they were trying to create, to now doing a get where you give it and get it back and then there's that free flowing action. The game has enhanced in a lot of ways, but a lot of the concepts, we're trying to do it, but we're doing it in a different way.
Yeah, that makes sense. So got like a couple more questions here. We're going to wrap it up soon. It's been super fun so far. We're going to end on a few. I'm just going to ask you a couple things straight up. I want you to tell me what the first things that come to mind are, and then we'll end with some advice. Okay. So the first question I have for you is, tell me your most memorable basketball moment.
And it doesn't matter player or.
It's your moment, whatever comes to mind. It doesn't have to be on the court. Obviously, this is just anything surrounding the game.
Okay. I don't know. Oh man, there's.
You can tell more than one if you want. But what's when I said that? What was one of the first things that came to your mind?
A lot of things, but we took a trip out to Abbotsford, BC. Like you said, when you asked that question, like 55,000 memories.
Yeah. You're like, whoa.
It was like I was at like one of those sushi bars where like the sushi just goes on the plate. And I grabbed a memory. One of my teammates, Kobe, we're playing the host team, and it was the first time I had seen someone pin someone on the backboard.
Hold on. So is this when you're playing or you're coaching?
This is as I was playing.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm grade 11. I was point. Tan Ong was the 2. Clarence was the 3. Kobe was the 4. And I think Tony Russo was the 5. Tony Russo was a 5'10", 5, right? But someone drove, and I can't handle people getting beaten off the dribble. I can't take it. I can't take it. Someone got beat off the dribble, and Kobe came over. The guy put it up, and Kobe pinned it on the glass. And like my memory of him was like jumping so high and pinning it. And I have it on tape. So for some reason on that sushi train of memories, that's one of them that came out. It's not my greatest or, best memory, but it's a big memory. It was fun. Yeah. It was a good thing. Yeah.
Nice. Is there any other ones that you want to pull off? Because you got a bunch, right? You can.
I do remember losing a semifinal to Oak Park when I was probably in like 3rd year, and I was at home. I remember calling the pastor of my church and saying, "I don't understand why it's not fair. It's not." I'm like, "It's not fair. I put in time. I work hard. I'm there every morning, all this kind of stuff." And I was like, "It's not fair. This is not fair."
Wow.
And just be like, because this is something that's so important to me. Like it was so important to me. Like, why that person? Like, one of the things I think I believe is there's always going to be somebody. There's always going to be a next. Like there's going to be a next coach. There's going to be a next provincial team starting point guard. There's going to be a next whatever. Why shouldn't that be me? Like, why not?
Yeah.
So when I didn't win, and I'm saying right? Because at that moment, it was all me, right? I was in my sorrows, right? When I didn't win, I was like, why not? And I remember that moment, and I don't necessarily remember what he said, but faith is important to me. And it was just like, that is okay. It is okay that you don't win.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're not good, you don't try. And I remember that moment, partly because then we won the year after that. But also because it was like it's just a reminder that you can work as hard as you want. Sometimes it doesn't happen. It doesn't mean there's not good that came out of it.
Yeah.
So I remember that. And I shared a few others, like that basketball moment of buying the basketball hoop.
Yeah. There's some good ones. So you actually maybe have answered the second one, because that one was pretty funny about your pastor. Was funniest basketball moment.
Okay, fair enough. That was I don't know if this is funny, but again, on that sushi train of memories, the first one that came was JV practice. For some reason, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Oh my gosh. Probably someone got beat off the dribble and someone didn't rotate. Probably someone didn't step in and take a charge. And I was excited. I'm using the word excited. I remember AJ Bazzi was on the team, and I was like, I don't even know what I'm saying, whatever. And I'm just like, we got to do this, blah, blah, blah. And I took my shirt and I ripped. When I was a kid, me and my cousins, we loved WWF.
Hogan.
Yeah. Hulk Hogan was everything. So I remember, and I grabbed a shirt, and it literally ripped exactly like Hulk Hogan, like right down the middle. And I ripped it off, right? I smacked the wall. And then I was like, I don't have a shirt to continue this process.
But hold on. Obviously, they weren't surprised that you got animated, but they were like, will they look over at you? And did you just play it off? Okay, let's go.
Yes. And either nobody got beat off the dribble or nobody attacked the hoop.
I was going to say, okay. Wow.
Man, it's funny when I think back to that moment. I was like, my gosh! But I clearly remember it's a white shirt, I liked the shirt, and then I was mad that they made me rip it, or that I chose to lose my focus. It was funny.
Oh man. All right. So we're gonna wrap it up. We're gonna go on one more question here. You've given tons of advice and just kind of like anecdotes through your stories, but I always like to leave on like asking a direct question. So if you can give 3 pieces of advice, or any pieces, it doesn't have to be 3, but let's just try to get 3 pieces of advice that you'd give to coaches who are young and they're just starting to coach. So, you know, they're the Stephen Tackie that was coaching for the first time, and you're like, I wish I could go watch that practice. Or the young Stephen Tackie who, you know, is watching and say, I'm going to take over my high school and I'm going to coach that team. You know, you obviously know way more now, but if you could just those key elements that are important to pass down to those coaches, what would be those key ideas, philosophies, things that you think are most important?
I think the first one is believe in possibilities. What you have or how you see a player is not going to be and shouldn't be the finished product. None of us are finished products. Mm-hmm. So when you have your tryout and you see a kid that is tiny and you're like, oh yeah, but he can't do anything. Believe that he can. Because if you believe that he can, he or she or they will believe that they can. And then they will do things to fit that. So I think the first thing is, and it's so cliche, but I don't know how to say it any differently, Darcy, man. You gotta believe that, like, they're not supposed to go to the NBA. They're not supposed to, but believe. I know this is just supposed to be points of advice, but I have to give a story for it. Coaching, we were playing at River East. It's a 10 o'clock in the morning game. And one of the players that we have, his name was Curtis Davey. Curtis was always lively, right? Not that good. He was tiny, not that good of a player, but he's always lively. And the game started and Curtis wasn't there. And I was like, where's Curtis? Halftime, Curtis is not there. Then 2 minutes into the game, you hear, yeah, let's go, boys. Let's go, boys. Curtis comes running into the gym 2 minutes into the game. I say, Curtis, what's up? Curtis lived in St. Norbert. His dad had left. He took a taxi to get to River East. He knew he was going to be late, but he believed, I think he believed that he belonged. And so he took a taxi. I don't know about you, but I don't know many kids right now that would take a taxi. And so I say that advice in that I think if you believe in people, they will give themselves a chance to really, really enjoy something. Second bit of advice I would say is when the lights are off and you don't have a key and you don't have a ball, find a way to make it work. Yeah. Resilience as a coach and as a person matters. And we can have obstacles in our way that will challenge us. But when you see that as an opportunity, then I think you find a way. So if the lights are off and you don't have a ball, be resilient and find a way to make it happen.
Love that, man. Love that.
And then I think the final thing is be joyful. Live your coaching life with enthusiasm and energy, but you have to be yourself. Be yourself while you do that. Because when you look back or when you think back to a game and you think back, oh, should we have done that? Should we have done that? If it's contrary to who you are, it's going to bug you way more. Be who you are as a coach and as a player. I think back to some times where I'm like, oh, why did we do that? And the only ones that bug me is when they really contradicted who I either was as a coach or what I feel we had become as a team. Those are the ones bug you because you can always play that, well, if we had done this, or if we had done that. But when you stick to who you are and when you know who you are and you stick to that, It's okay. Mistakes happen, but you still have that solid ground to stand on. And that solid ground will get you through any of the turmoil. So be enthusiastic and be yourself. Be resilient. And now I've forgotten the first one. And I can't remember the first one. So I'm going to watch this back.
It's okay.
When I watch it back, I'm going to be like, really? Darcy didn't edit this part out. He really didn't edit this part out.
We're not editing it. We're not editing anything. You know what?
The first one matters.
Well, I wish I could press rewind, but I think, you know what, the good thing is that people watching this can rewind it, and I'm sure if it resonated with them, it's And if you remember before I finished, then just cut me right off. But
Darcy, honestly, thank you for putting time into doing this. As much as I thank you, the opportunities that you have listening to all these people, a request that I have is, as a basketball person in Manitoba who believes in basketball in Manitoba, I ask that you share your stories with as many people as you get. The stories you heard from Hemmings, the stories you heard from Colleen, from Kenapolko, I honestly ask that you share them because, and I saw you interviewed Debbie Yabua the other day. Share all of those stories because we grow the game together. And I think history matters. It gives richness to what we do. So I just ask that the privilege that you have, that you take it and then you make most of it by sharing with any and everybody that you come across.
Absolutely. I can and will do that. And I appreciate you taking the time. The conversation was full of energy and passion, as I knew it would be. You know, some conversations you're smiling a lot, and this was definitely one of them. So I enjoyed the time. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm just checking the time here, we may have cracked our longest podcast with you. And it literally felt like 20 minutes. So it was unbelievable. It was a great time.
I'm sorry.
No, that's the thing, because this is how you know it's a good thing, because I'm the host. If I could have ended this at any point, I'm like, oh, this really sucks.
Fair enough.
Got to end this thing, right? So I say that in a way to say that it was a ton of fun, because time just flew by and I was just hanging out, listening to you talk and share. And so we'll say goodbye on that, and good luck for the rest of the season. And I'm looking forward to actually seeing you in person, maybe even seeing you coach, because it's been a long, long time since I've actually seen some high school basketball at all. So
yeah, well, I definitely give praise to God that He gave me the opportunity to coach, and by doing that, provided me with opportunities to just be involved in the life of basketball in Manitoba. I plan on coaching for a long time, and I hope you stay involved in the game. I would have loved to hear a little bit more about who's going to interview you. Who's going to interview?
Well, I think you were the first one that actually asked me a counter. So I mean, maybe it'll be you.
Oh, hey, that's why I got all excited there. I got excited.
We'll get through a full season first, and then we'll think about that.
Because you got a story to tell, just like everybody else.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, and take care, and thanks again.
You too. Take care. Thank you.
All right. Cool.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please like, subscribe, follow, and share this series, and reach out to us with your comments on the show. Thanks again for joining us.